Is faithful. I'll just wait until everybody gets into the chat. Oh, all right. What is the time? 3:57. We'll wait 3 minutes so everybody starts rolling in. In a different place today, as you can probably tell. Mac will be here soon, everybody. He's just running a bit behind time, so I'm driving today. But we'll It's me just checking everything works. Apologies. Jack, who do we want to see? Who do we want to see in the mystery signings? Realistic fringe guys, not David Fafita. I think that we probably will look at some centres and some back rowers and potentially some depth pieces, namely in the middle forwards. I'm of the belief that we need a lock forward. I would still look at Kobe Hetherington, despite what some people may think. I think that he would be ideal for us. I just think you look at what Terrell and Fanua sort of produced through the middle, and Royce Hunt on the weekend. It'd be nice to have somebody like a Kobe just to tie in on the inside and just look after it. I'd like to see that. Centers, obviously Taylor May's been spoken about, but I'm not too sure. Um, I'm not too sure where that's at and what's going on there. The last time I sort of heard anything, they said that it was actually Richo that recommended he go to a mental health clinic and sort his head out. So I would assume that therefore he'll end up at the Tigers at some point. But if that takes a little while, I'm a big fan of Viliami Vailea at the Cowboys via the Warriors. I think he's a guy that would be really ideal. Zach Labart's also off contract. I don't think he's managed to fight his way into the Cowboys side yet. If for whatever reason they're not going to give him a crack, I'd look there. AJ has been rumoured. He's probably he's similar to Skelton was last year. Clearly a class above. Needs to needs to, it's probably come to a point where if Penrith aren't going to give him a crack and he's stuck behind guys like Jenkins and McLean and so forth, both Jesse and Casey, then you probably look there. In terms of middle forwards on the market, there's a couple here and there that wouldn't be a bad shout. Fletcher Baker, it looks like. I know that people think that he's not that great, but I think that Fletcher Baker's a guy that would be able to plug a gap for us. He plays back row, plays middle. I'd look there. Um, Again, simply because of the cap squeeze. At the Broncos, I think we probably need to try and retain Dewey as best as possible. If we don't, then that's a concern because I think he'll probably play left centre until Makasini or somebody else rears their heads. And you need him as a backup half. If not, there's a couple of guys you could look at. A Jacob Arthur sort of typifies, Marshall's all effort all the time. Um, Drew Hutchison's a guy that I would look at again because he's just simply a depth piece. Who else? Always love Bunty R4. He doesn't actually miss tackles. People know him for running off the back fence. He's somebody that I'd certainly look at. Viramu Greg's been told to look elsewhere. He's somebody that I would genuinely look into. He's a big body. We don't have many big bodies, and I think that he'd be a carbon copy of Royce Hunt, and mean that we don't have to change up the bench rotation too much. Yeah, there's a couple here and there that I would look into. Ultimately, I think we also need to make a couple of back row signings. So Pierce Paul has been rumoured. Pierce Paul would be nice, but I think we probably need somebody underneath him. So like a Jacob Arlick would be nice. Harry Hassett's been rumoured, but I'm not too sure what's going on there. Billy Burns is somebody that I would look at as well. One of those guys that's a class above in reserve grade, first grade. Probably doesn't really let anybody down, but doesn't really set the world on fire. I'd look there. So, yeah, there's a few, but I guess the main thing is, and the thing that we can be happy about, Jack, is the fact that the spine, even with Galvin leaving, is pretty much sorted. And there's reasonably adequate depth. A Luke Lalii can sort of supplant a Buller, or a Seneg Taruva can do so. Obviously, Latu's there. If we can keep Dewey, then he can play there at a pinch. You've got Heath Mason that I would like to see developed into a Connor Watson type, so that helps as well. And then obviously with the hooker situation, you've got Uppy, Talon Silva, and Jared Haywood as well, sort of as three options moving forward. So that gives you sort of an idea. But I think a lot of what we do will be dictated around these off contract players. I think Adam Dewey's now become a priority. I think we can only necessarily. I think ideally you probably only keep one of Naden Staines and Fatape. That's what I would do. I wouldn't sort of look, to retain 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3. That's just my opinion. I'd like to see us go and get, hypothetically a Remus Smith from Catalan. That'd be nice. A guy that was far too good to be going to Super League. I'll be looking there. And again, like I watched the cup game over the weekend, and you just look at the guys that St George have compared to us, and we're in dire need of some experienced forwards that can just do a job. You think back to the chat around Frank Molo and Blake Laurie and whatever else when Clemmer was heading for the exits, and man, like if we could get them on cheap deals, and they come here knowing that they're realistically only going to play 3 to 4 first grade games a year, you probably do look into it. Like even guys like Fatala Mariner and whatnot are perfect for them. Realistically, our most experienced forwards in Cup are guys like Kit and Tony Suka. Like fuck, like. Like you need some guy. That's why Clemmer would have been so good for us. I know he's on too much money, but he would have been so good for us in Cup. So it's nice playing championship manager sometimes. I guess we'll just have to see. You got to unearth the right guys. My dad's just jumped into the stream. Hello, is that my Magpies jersey you're wearing? Absolutely it is, but you haven't worn it in years. It's mine now. The only one you ever wear is your away orange 05 jersey. So I figured I'd take some initiative and wear this one and give it the time and the sun it deserves. Andrew, do you think we could land players like them? Yeah, mate, I do. Like at the end of the day, it's a squad game these days. It's almost like the EPL where you need guys that are brought in effectively to be rotation players. I think that's extremely important. You really need that, and it's pivotal to winning the league in my view. Um, Look at the dogs. Look at what they're producing underneath. Like they lost Burton. Bailey Haywood comes in, plays six, rips it up. I would not be surprised. If hypothetically Lipboy Hotboy comes in to replace Jacob Preston, he rips it up because that's what he's producing in cup. We don't have that, and it's difficult. And that's I guess that's the most disappointing thing. Now, obviously, we run three middles on the bench, but at the same time, one falls off, and suddenly you're calling up Sooker or Kit. And, you biting your fingernails back to your fingers. Cup was putrid. Bang against the Molo Laurie ideas at the time, but one injury away from starting red in the front row. Well, mate, yeah, that's it. Like you've said it right there. It's a really tough one, and these are guys we're going to have to go and look at. Zero tackle, right? So props off contract straight away. Bunty, I would sign him genuinely. He has a red hot crack off the back fence. You play him in short stints. He's played a shitload of cup. He's played a shitload of first grade, and he has an absurd tackle efficiency. I don't think people realise. Very good. We've got some guys here like Tom Arlaire, Matt Croker, Isaac Suamala-Awi, Viliami Fafita. They're all a little bit on the young side for me. I'd be looking at like a guy like Jack Hetherington. Genuinely, I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. Jaden Hunt, I wouldn't hate either. Guys like Corey Jensen and Josh Kerr are probably going to command decent cash. Who else is there? Jordan McLean. If Jordan McLean wants to take a significant pay cut, wants to come back to Sydney, and is willing to just be part of a squad, you'd look there. Mark Nichols, I would genuinely look there. And he's got affinity with Richo. Toff Sibley, I would not go there. He can't tackle. Siwa Tokeaho, I would look there. Marty Torpau, maybe. Genuinely, I wouldn't rule out a homecoming, and he doesn't miss tackles. And realistically, he's probably only going to play 3 to 4 games a year. Who else is here? There's a couple of different options. Adam Elliott, probably not. Jacob Arlick, big fan of. He's a back row. I'd look there. Kenny Bromwich, plays between front row, back row. I think he retires. Everybody wants Ethan Bullamori as an Isaac Moses client. You can forget that. I mentioned Billy Burns a little bit before. I would look into it. Who else we got here? Yeah, these are the sorts of guys I'd look into. Felice Kofusi, if he wants to go around for another year, I would look there. Absolutely. He'd be unreal for culture as well. Tolman Boy, great for the Finu brothers and whatnot. Yeah, there's value. You just need to find it, and these guys need to be made aware that they're only going to play a couple of games a year. That might be a fair shout. Yeah. Andrew, Dogs took a season and come good, but yeah, they're impressive now. They are, but Gus did some phenomenal work stripping it back within the first couple of years to really get them to a good spot. Won a lot of lower grades grand finals. Or made grand finals in lower grades from cut to flag to SG to Mats. Their recruitment model is quite impressive, and you can tell they're all learning the systems. They look very, very similar to Penrith. It just speaks volumes of Cameron Ciraldo. Really sliding doors moment. And I love Benj and I really want him to succeed. But you look at if this board got blown up 6 months previous. Ciro, our coach, does Richo get him across? Maybe. Who knows? Hope the Tigers follow a similar trajectory in the coming years. Yeah, mate, I hope so. It's an interesting one. Time will tell, and lots to play up. But the first grade side is doing good things, and they're building it on effort. And there is some genuine structure there in both attack and defence. It's just flowing down, and I was actually going to mention this by the time Matt got in. I have some concerns about the system, and you saw a guy like Brent Naden come in, and despite the fact that, you build familiarity in combos, and, obviously Star left, it was really disappointing that, one guy was taken out that was a centre. which is it's a difficult position to defend, but ultimately you trust the man on your inside, your back rower and your half, and then you sort of move with them. One change and suddenly the wheels had fallen off. That really concerned me, and it's something I am absolutely concerned about moving forward. But who knows? Randomizer, Richie said there should be some signings soon. Any idea who's coming in? Um, I've heard bits and pieces, but nothing absolutely concrete. Obviously, AJ Kepaoa, there's rumours that he's returned and that he's been sighted at Concord. He wasn't named for Penrith for a second straight week, so I'm not 100% sure on what's going on with him, full stop, let alone whether it involves West Tigers. Kai Pearce-Paul, I was told by a source close to the club that Richardson really rates him quite highly. Thinks that he's been playing with the shackles on at Newcastle, and as a result was willing to blow any potential suitor out of the water from a cash perspective. But the way I see it with Kai Pearce-Paul is that I feel like we would have known something by now if it had happened, because Parramatta's in the race for him. And Canberra in the race for him, and Newcastle basically said, we'll have last rights. You go around, you find out what clubs are preparing to offer you. We'll come back with our final offer, and we'll give you sort of an idea of what we think you should do. And with the Terrell May stuff, the Terrell May stuff played out in the media because there was multiple clubs sniffing around him. So you'd have to remember the Dogs and the Dragons both had a look at him. Once he had his meeting with the Tigers, it was clear that his player manager had, sort of let the other clubs know of who he was seeing and what clubs he was sort of also speaking to. And within seconds, it had come out via David Riccio, who's Shane Flanagan's mouthpiece, right? So this is how the game works. And then I was told that we had May at 10 o'clock in the morning. On the day that it came out in the press, but within 2 to 3 hours it had blown up again via Dave Riccio. So they had, his management had told the Dragons that he would not be pursuing their contract. So in a very, very roundabout way, and I'm saying this because I'm almost killing time, but with Kai Pearce-Paul, I feel like by now if it had happened, we'd probably know about it. In saying that, the Taruva stuff was dead quiet. You did not hear a thing. And then it just popped up on Anzac Day that the offer had been submitted, and out of nowhere it happened. So that is a genuine possibility, but I just don't see it happening. In terms of other guys that have been rumoured, I was told that there was a 3-year deal on the table for Kobe Hetherington around for 2026. Around the time that we were pursuing Terrell May. So obviously it kind of felt like those two players were being pursued and we were going to sign one or the other. But the club's always kind of been like, well, if you don't want to stay in Brisbane or they're not offering the terms that you want, we're here and we would love to have you. So I wouldn't be surprised if, hypothetically Renault does stay around and the NRL says, no, you're not actually worth 350, you're worth 400, 500, 600,000, that there's a cap squeeze there. And, a guy like Kobe is pushed out because the Tigers were offering him good cash. Like I'm talking upwards of 450k, possibly 500, and a long-term deal. So they will. That'll be an interesting one. Other guys to keep an eye on. I think that I would not be surprised, depending what happens with Dewey, that we look at Tyrone May and bringing him back from Catalan. His manager has said that he quote unquote wants to play with his brothers in the NRL. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back as a backup half. I wouldn't expect him to play off the bench like he did for Penrith in the early years of their dynasty. I think that he just play as a backup, and he's close with Tito and Jerome and the other sort of guys at Penrith, from Penrith. So that wouldn't surprise me. Who else? I wouldn't rule out. I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but I wouldn't rule out Joseph Manu. I think that we need a left centre. Mussey's going to come into grade via the left wing. We have money to spend. Yeah, just he has a lot of respect for Benji. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't actually know anything. I'm simply just speculating, but that might be an outside shout. Let's wait and see. Um, Randomizer, any chance the Galvin situation turns around in our favour and we are playing finals? If we are playing finals by the end of the year, no, no. I don't understand why the Galvin camp. I don't understand why the Galvin camp has been so, willing to hold a grudge. Here he is, my partner in crime, willing to hold a grudge around things that happened in 2023, like signing and signing Latu Fainu, jumping around between the back rower and a 5'8". But nonetheless, this is the bet they've made. Richardson said he was going to spend the money, and you could easily turn around to Lachlan and say, "Hey, well, as it turns out, you wanted to prioritise your development. You're in a winning team now. You have a number six, as your coach has played 350 first grade games, won premierships, World Cups, and the rest. Why don't you stay around for the sake of your development?" I think the answer's still going to be no, whether we like it or not. So it's one of those things. Just one last one before we jump into the web cast proper. Our younger grade sides not cup showing this development like at the Dog? Long story short, no, but we do things a little bit different to them. We are more inclined to call up youngsters quite quickly. And you can see that with guys like Heath Mason, Luke Lowley, E. Talented Silver, etc. Very much, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Whereas with guys like Jack Todd, Jack Underhill, Lipboy, Hotboy, even Harry Hayes to a lesser extent, Gus has basically said, you're not going to be playing first grade until you're 24, 25. So prepare for that, and the contracts reflect that. So it's a little bit different, and as a result, the Dogs sort of hold their players back. That said, it's a very, very young side that they possess currently in New South Wales Cup, and they're doing good things. So maybe as time goes on, you remove the train and trialists and the part-timers and the experienced guys like your Pharmacillies and your Brennan Wakems of the world that they've had in the past, and you bring in the young guys there. But no, they're doing things a little bit differently to us. Just while Mac is here, is fixing stuff. You think we see Marcy in first grade this year in the last couple of rounds, or is it actually a case of letting the kid develop a bit more than just getting old enough to play? I don't think they'll rush him, but it'll depend simply on how he plays in Cup and Flag, although I think he goes straight to Cup. Mac, how are you? You right if I keep this music in?
Just trying to get my shit working.
Well, in the meantime, I'll keep talking.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. All right, what was the question?
Just around he and Marcy playing first grade this year.
How's my audio? Check 1, 2.
It's excellent.
Okay, good. Hey, Marcy Marcassini, do I think that he will play this year? I mean, it's really difficult to tell, isn't it? Because, he's not even featured since SG Ball season ended yet. He's playing GPS rugby. You would know better than me. I think that's the case.
That is correct.
I didn't see much from Marcy in the SG Ball season to sort of make me think that he was actually ready for first grade, to be honest. So I think, but he is a big beast. So, I mean, physically you would expect him to be up to it. I guess my answer to the question would be, it depends how much our depth's been tested by sort of the end of the year. It's pretty possible, I guess, that, once he starts playing flag and then maybe some New South Wales Cup, if we're running short on some outside backs later in the season, that they might call upon him. But if we're in contention and our depth's not tested, doubt you see him.
I reckon you're right there, mate. Absolutely. Anyway, let's kick into this podcast.
Till we realize this life is temporary. An illusion we must fight. Open up your eyes. Gonna be alright.
We're West Tigers faithful, Wincast 5 for the year. Thank you to everybody who joined me for that first 20 minutes worth of question and answer. Joe McCord, how are you?
Good, thank you. Well, what did I miss?
We were just talking about who these signings that Rich O teased are going to be, when they're coming, who I think are realistic people, and what I would do from a squad building point of view. It was actually quite enjoyable.
Cute.
Mate, let's jump straight in because we are on limited time. I've got about 40 to 45 before I've got to make tracks. So, obviously, there was 2 victories on Saturday night. One was a Labour landslide, which I was particularly happy about. But the other one was a St George Illawarra. It was a West Tigers win against the St George Illawarra Dragons. It was incredibly shaky and looked like in many bits and pieces that it may not have come off. How did you see that one?
Well, firstly, don't be such a woke pretty boy. Secondly, that was terrible. And isn't it amazing? We have 5 wins, 4 losses, and we have not been very good.
Yes, it is amazing, and it is a sign that we actually have good players, and we can
Yes, and good coaching.
Good things. And furthermore, the curse is over. The curse
is gone.
And you saw that in the 12-point turnaround, which obviously decided the match. But nonetheless, I agree with you. How did we win that? The Dragons were faster. They had more energy. They had more intent. I think that they probably didn't complete as well as us, but my goodness.
It's up here.
Yeah, well, mate, our attack was the best it has looked this year, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But wow.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly what's going on between the ears with these players. Their motivation level is high. Their willingness to play for each other is high. They've got this what do they call it? You know, when your back's against the wall thing going on. I think Luai showed up, and it was a little bit like, you know, the old trope, like when you've got the in the Wild West movies where the town's been run by like a terrible sheriff, and like the gunslinger comes out from out of town and comes in, and then suddenly the priest is also a gunslinger and shit. You've seen that? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Like Luai's that gunslinger that came from out of town, and Terrell Mays come in from out of town, and like suddenly Stafford Toller, and I know you didn't play, but like I think that's really what it comes down to. Is like everybody's just got this like, now it's time. You know, we've finally got the ingredients, but they're not putting in the ingredients together at all. Their cohesion sucks. They're physically overmatched in most games against most teams, but they are playing for each other, and they are playing for the coach.
They are. I thought that, going back to the OG gunslinger and his qualities, I don't think it was a coincidence that you really saw him play straight, change things up with his tempo a little bit, and really take on the Dragons, even cutting under the ruck on a couple of occasions. You know, that our attack was the best that it has ever looked. 26 points in the first half. Look, it probably should have been 20. But nonetheless, you know, the way that we took our chances was incredible. I spoke about Luai's ability to change tempo. I saw that watching the game for a second time round. Sort of starts in third gear, and then you know sped up a little bit to try and engage sort of the ABC in front of him, to then hold up the pass and to set up his outside man, whether it be Galvin. But what I'm also seeing from him is this subtlety in his game that only the great halves do, and that's throwing the ball really late. You know, these guys like Nathan Cleary, Jerome Hughes, these sorts of guys do it. It's the first time that I saw Jerome do it. And have a look on Staines' first try, and everybody's going to talk about the Galvin tip on, and that was very, very classy. But watch Luai just hold up the pass enough to ensure that we drag in Moses Sully, and for that reason, I am extremely optimistic about his attack, moving forward, like I was last week. But I feel like we're really beginning to see it.
Yeah, it sort of occurs to me that maybe like Benji and Jerome have sort of zigged when everybody was expecting us to zag. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at the Tigers and you see Jerome Luai coming in, and the first time you come up against this new Tigers side, you might be tempted to like game plan to shut down Jerome. And so instead of like Jerome becoming like the try assist focal point, like the game plan's more about Jerome distributing correctly and drawing defenders and like taking the pressure off the other guys. And that's worked. Like if you think about how much we've seen improvement in Stafford, how effective Sumi Taruva's been, Galvin, etc., it definitely feels like that there's a lot less pressure on some of the other attacking threats. Jareen Baller's having, his best year, and Talon and so on and so forth. So it might be by design. It could be that they realise, like if we try to play through Jerome, it's going to be predictable. They're going to rush up and shut you down. So instead, let's use you as like a running decoy.
I agree. He's definitely been the pass before the pass, as opposed to the guy that gets the ball, second man, and eventually, throws the pass that leads to the try. But that's befitting of a great halfback, to sort of set up his outside man. Let's talk about the reasons why we may have lost, and a lot of them are mainly around, for me, defensive aptitude, but also fatigue. For Noah Bolle, there were a couple efforts there that were befitting of a man who is tired. Terrell May, quite similar, but also the concerns around the system, where you lost a guy in Stafford Tower who is a great defender in his own right, but he's only a centre, was taken out. You brought in a guy in Brent Naden, and suddenly that entire edge crumbles. That was a really, really big concern for mine. And again, going back to the fatigue of both Terrell and Fanua, to me, this looks like a team that is crawling to the bye.
I think it's possible you're right, but it's also that previous week's game was very sapping, and I think they only had a 6-day turnaround. So you right there. You want to spit?
Oh, sorry, I thought I muted it.
But so like we'll wait and see. Like give them a proper 7-day turnaround. When are we playing next? Sunday?
Oh, we got 8 days. Saturday.
Yeah, good 8-day turnaround.
Yeah.
So that might help. I think that. Look. I mean, yes, they looked fatigued, but I think that they've looked fragile defensively all season. In the Sharks game, it was. Like I think I mentioned last week, very 2005-esque defense. Our first line of defense isn't actually all that good, but the scramble's good. There's always a Tigers jersey in the frame, and that's true on both sides of the ball. I agree with CB. I think I still want to see Jerome run more. I think he did run more. I think he's progressively started to run more since Galvin got dropped. I think that coincided with him when he went back to 6 for that 1 week. Didn't run super much in that game, but last week and then this week you've seen a consistent increase in the amount of line attacks that he's made. I think it's just coming down to desire. I do think that it's a big ask this week, though.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to that. Just some individual stuff going back to the defence sort of thing and desire. Lachlan Galvin on that right edge. I think that now, last week I think he was probably a bit fired up. Didn't want to die wondering. Was playing for his own reputation, for his family. Those sorts of things. This week, some of the attempts on Luciano Leilua were befitting of a man that I think might have had his head elsewhere. Is that fair to say?
It's sort of the first time that I can think of, that Lachlan's come up against a genuinely physically intimidating player on the opposite side running at him. Like, I feel like that he's dodged a couple of bullets in matchups this year with players being out. So it might be just more like how he might just be a little bit like still intimidated physically by these big fucking ugly units like Luciano Leilua. But head elsewhere. I mean, there was a lot of body language. Like, you can read into some of the body language from this game and say that. I think you could. Like, there were certainly, a few situations where you could say the same about Jerome.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Just purely playing devil's advocate, I just thought there was a couple of times that I was a little bit concerned about.
Well, what I mean by that is I think that, like, you know, the boys might still not be seeing eye to eye, but somehow, you know, in the past, like these sort of like social problems at the Tigers would unravel things, but something behind the scenes is a little different here, where you know they're having the conflict, but they're not letting it affect them on the field. And I mean, without really being a fly on the wall, you'd have to give that credit to Benji.
Yeah, agreed. I actually appreciated what Luai said. We don't have to be best mates. He said it to Chamis. You know, we're just going to get on with the job. Another guy on that right edge who defends actually one inside Lachlan Galvin is Alex Seyfarth. I thought he was phenomenal first half. I thought he was excellent. He was offloading late. He was hitting holes. He was ball playing. He even had a try assist. I thought he was excellent. I thought he did some. You know, I thought he made the right reads. I didn't think that the tries that the Dragons scored were necessarily his fault down that edge. But then second half, some silly errors, particularly the one a minute out from full time. But the one that people probably don't realise, he was really slow to get back into the defensive line, which created an overlap for Little's second try, where Luciano sort of made a break, and then it got to Corey Allen, and then he went inside and kicked Tongi out then to Little. It was quite a befitting Alex Seyfarth performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's Alex Seyfarth. Like, I mean, he's definitely the weakest player in our 17. So, like, it's a past game for him, I suppose. For me, like, I think the story is that we won with our depth mightily tested. Like, if you a couple of weeks ago, let's say, the last time Skelton was healthy, are saying, we have no Toa, we have no Skelton, and we're running out Charlie Staines, and we're running out Brent Naden, you probably just assume you're going to lose, especially if the Tigers, because, the Tigers are reigning wooden spoon three-peat. If you're the reigning wooden spoon three-peat, and you're playing your, third string center and fifth string winger, you're pretty likely to lose, but we won. And I want to actually say Charlie Staines contributed big time.
He was wonderful. It must be said, he was safe in the air, finished his tries. I thought he did pretty well out of yardage for a small.
He did do well out of yardage.
He did everything that was asked of him. I thought he was excellent, and he got the raps that he deserved from Benji in the presser. Despite the fact that he had the shit.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Go.
I mean, it's not as though Charlie Staines has not been a good winger in the past. There was a time where he was a very, very clearly and obviously a first grade finisher.
He won a grand final.
What do you do? Like, if Charlie Staines plays consistently this well, I know right now, like, I can't say that, even though he played well, like, you're giving him a little bit of credit because, you didn't expect it. So I'm not suggesting that you pick him ahead of Gerald Skelton. But does this model of Charlie Staines skip Lalali? Does this model of Charlie Staines get picked, ahead of Naden? Where do you see this model of Charlie Staines if this is his genuinely consistent level? Because I think Charlie's the sort of player who, in my opinion, probably plays very much to the standard of the backline that is feeding him ball. And you've seen on the other side Sunir Taruva feasting. Charlie Staines is the same type of try-scoring winger that Taruva is. He doesn't score tries getting up in the sky. He doesn't physically dominate people, but he can get around them, as you saw 2 times. He can actually finish sort of similarly to Taruva. And he has that inbuilt combination with Luai. Like, Luai knows where Charlie is going to be. I think Charlie played in Jerome's Harold Matson SG ball teams.
Yeah.
So I think it's a question mark.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I actually said before you jumped on that with Naden, Fatape, and Staines off contract, I think we can probably only keep one.
Well, I guess that depends on what's coming through. Like, I mean, you got Felity is also off contract, and you've got I want to say there's another Sakura. No, Sakura's signed for next year, right? So, I mean, you got four spots really there, and I think Felity's definitely out the door. I don't think they're going to re-sign Felity on a top 30. So. They're going to have to replace him. I don't really think that there's any outside backs tearing the door down to get upgraded that are in the pathways. We've already got Marcassini earmarked for a top 30, so he probably is the one that's taken Fellity's spot, I guess. And then so what are we going to sign two outside backs? I mean, we'd have to if we're looking at replacing two of those three.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Are there two outside backs on the market right now that are upgrades on two of those three? I mean, I personally would prefer us to keep probably Naden and Staines at this point over Fatape. I think that I rely on those two more. I know Fatape is a bit younger, but like I feel like youth is probably not something we're lacking, and it's not like Fatape is a 19-year-old either. Like he'd be 24 soon. So, can you find upgrades on Fatape and say Charlie?
I don't know.
Oh well, I do.
Dominic Young.
I mean, yeah, like if you can get Dom Young, I think we had this conversation earlier. Like if you can get Dom Young with some freight being paid by the Roosters. Do you take Dom Young over Brent Naden? Yes. Do you take Dom Young over Charlie Staines? Yes. Do you take Dom Young. Okay, so that's one. Is that realistic?
Nah.
So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I wouldn't be so quick to push them out the door. I'm glad Charlie's back. I'm glad he played well. I'd like to see him string the rest of the season together to get a good look at him.
Yeah, I would too.
Joey Manu, not wrong, Joey Manu.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Oh, wouldn't that be wonderful? Nonetheless, look, it's an interesting one, and I think that they'll let their run late to determine recruitment. But nonetheless, great to see Stainsy a part of a winning side, and for us to find a win, irrespective of how we did it. We're 5-4 for the first time in over half a decade. I said this to a Dragons fan that was trying to give me shit on X the other day. Don't fucking tell me how I should feel. We are 5-4. We are, it's nice to see the boys singing the team song quite often. And when we start putting it together for 80 minutes, if and when we start putting it together for 80 minutes, we will win even more games.
Mate, like, I don't think it's a matter of if, right? Like, there's no way this team could get worse. Like, I know it sounds strange, but like, they're playing really visibly poorly and winning, like on both sides of the ball. They're falling off tackles. They're getting dominated at the point of contact. They're still only making 30-meter sets. What the fuck? That first set of 6 off the kickoff, we made 20 meters. Like that's the same as the 2024 model Tigers, and yet we're winning. So, like, I mean, if we improve 20%. We're going to win more games. If we improve 50%, we're going to win heaps more games. And we have a lot of room in our cap, and we have a lot of dud players off contract. We've got room to move. We've got lots of ways to improve, and we've got a lot of cohesion yet to come. Ironically enough, after all the like chest beating about our pathways, I got to say, I think that the pathways cupboard is bare, and I feel like that's our weakness now, which is weird to say considering how bullish we were about that before round one.
Yeah, look, well, something to discuss in the pathway section, because I watched the World Cup and flagged very intently with the thought of trying to get a fair idea of where the hell we're at. Well said, Bryce.
Piastri
wins again. Dutton gone.
I just want to clarify. That was a joke when I called you a woke pretty boy. I am not a maggot.
Yeah,
So-
you're actually quite the opposite.
So, if you're out there and you heard that and you went, yeah, Yeah, Mac, yeah, he loves fucking MAGA. Sorry to burst your bubble.
And with that, West Tigers play the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne on a Sunday afternoon. If anybody has seen Melbourne play on a Sunday afternoon this year, look out. Benji Marshall's named an unchanged side. So despite his injury concerns, Brent Naden has been named in the number 4. Other than that, not really a change. The biggest thing for us is actually looking at the opposition. No Will Warbrick, who is scheduled to come back. No Harry Grant, who is scheduled to come back. And Nelson Asafa Solomona is in jersey 22, but he's been
That's
named
good.
a couple of times. So sort of have a look at when they trim the squad on Saturday, where on earth they're at. I have one thing and one thing only to ask you, Mac. Is this a free hit?
Yeah, it's a really good way to look at it, man. Look, I'll tell you how the Storm feel, right? And this is probably the way to look at it. Do you think Craig Bellamy is scared of this game?
I think that he would be quite emotional in the lead up. Would he be thinking about us personally as a threat? No. Would he be concerned about his players getting up after playing nearly 90 minutes and having to travel back home? Possibly.
I think that he would look at us as. I think he would be actually a little confused because I reckon he would be looking at this and going, the Tigers are probably who I'd want to be facing coming off a loss here, especially them coming off 2 hard wins. But then he's also going to be like, you know what what Bellamy's like. He'll be looking at that and going, but I don't want my players to feel that way, and so, and they will be right. Like the Melbourne Storm are going to be looking at this and going, oh, cool, a let off. Thankfully, like we, and the Tigers aren't going to be looking at that way. The Tigers are going to be looking at this. Benji pulled a really good rein in the post game by hosing down that win. Because the Tigers are going to be looking at this and going, finally, we're going to have another benchmark test. The last one was against the Broncos. We shut the bed. We're coming off 2 wins again. Let's get that fucking 3rd win. The Tigers are going to be up for it. Are Melbourne going to be fully up for it? I mean, you would think so. Like, I know, Bellamy's obviously one of the all-time great coaches. They're missing some players, missing some key players. They've got some inexperienced players in some key positions who are probably not used to kind of this unique chemistry of a game. This is a real sort of interesting game for both teams. It's the sort of game that Bellamy would be looking at a bounce back. Bellamy would be looking at if we're the best team in the NRL, we win this game, and that's makes it a clear storyline coming in. And for us, it's we're looking at this game as a potential, what do they call it, scheduled loss. And so those 2 storylines coming together, rarely does it pan out the way that it should on paper when those 2 storylines converge. I find these are usually the games that throw up the weird results.
I agree. And I think that, for the most part, Melbourne, I would be concerned about fatigue a little bit, but as long as Marshall gives more minutes to guys like Sionair, Royce, Jack Bird gets some time at lock, I'm not overly worried because Melbourne have just played 90 minutes. But I would expect to see a strong response out of Trent Liero and Stefano. Now, look, Stefano obviously playing his old club, whatever else, him and Fanua, Cousins probably try and bash each other through the middle, etc., etc. But those 2 blokes lost in that game. There's no 2 ways about it. And for them both to be named this week, I would expect for both of them to come out with rockets up their asses. But as you say, they do have some players out, and there is fragility. Suafa'alongo is a phenomenal attacking player, but defensively he's not very good. The same goes for Grant Anderson. Bronson Garlick is a guy that I think you can spot set genuinely. And sort of pick him out and go at him all day through the middle. This isn't a Melbourne team that is, that doesn't have a chink in their armour. But I will say, again, Sunday afternoon, dry track in Melbourne, we will know within the first 10 to 15 where we're at. what Canberra did was that with Melbourne's fast start, and they always start fast. They start unbelievably fast. They did enough to hold on to stay around, but it was their belief that got them home. We're going to learn. We're going to learn a lot about this team's belief. Now, I know. Cronulla was incredible and spoke to the mental fortitude of these boys, but we're a long way from home against the premiership favourites with not much of a a crowd to call upon to galvanise us. I think it's going to be probably the biggest test of our character this year.
The pattern says that we're in this game because of how we've won other games, and like what you said that about that Sharks game is also partially true about the Dragons game, and it was also partially true about some of the games we lost to. Like we do have this we look bad at the start, but if we're still in there, the Tigers jagged a try. Oh, how the fuck are they up 6-0? Type.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Buller's just come down with the ball.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like that's that's how we've been. So, and even when the Dragons went up early and then they went up again, it's like they're really well on top. But and even in that bloody Newcastle game when Newcastle were really bad, Newcastle were on top of us early on in that contest, and so what this team does know how to do is stay in the fight. They know how to hang in there. They know how to make the last ditch effort. They know how to score. They know how to score a try, right? They know how to put together a try, even though a lot of the busy work in the lead up looks clunky at times. When they need to put a try on, they can put a try on. They've got lots of ways to do it, and so that means that the pressure can mount on the opposition in really fast, insidious ways. Suddenly the opposition are looking up at the clock and it's 32 minutes and they're behind and they felt like they were winning. And that can really do weird things to the mentality of a side. And I look through the Melbourne team 1-17 and it doesn't look like a side that has a lot. How do I say this? It looks like a side that could be beaten mentally. It looks like a team of players that I can pinpoint a bunch of them, and I could say,
"Hi, Steph.
Go out and not just Steph, but yes, go out and psychologically beat that guy. Go out and psychologically beat Sean Bloor. Go out and psychologically beat Stefano Utoikamanu. Go out and psychologically beat even somebody like Su'a. If we bomb the shit out of Su'a and just attack him enough, he'll start to he'll lessen his effectiveness. Obviously, the big one there is just the combination between Hughes and Pappenhausen. I think that there's not really much we could do to shut those two down. Even Munster though, I feel like Munster is somebody who you can actually get off his game by targeting him. And if you do that and you put too much Melbourne become too reliant on Hughes and Pappenhausen to get them home, then I've seen in the past Pappenhausen fall into a heap in certain games too. I think he did a little bit in that game that they lost last weekend. So I can certainly see a path to victory. I think it's a relatively clear path to victory. I wouldn't bet on us being able to pull it off, but what I would say is I would be very surprised if we get beaten by much. I think that this game will be close.
I would be delighted if we finish 1-12. Just a few things for the tip sheet. Sean Bloor and Alessia Katoa will both be isolated against our halves, which is a massive test for Lachlan Galvin. I worry about Sam Weller and Alex Seyfarth's ability to bodyguard, so that is, that's an opportunity for points for them. I'm not particularly worried about their outside backs. Look, Su'a tends to bounce around and he'll just create stuff out of nothing, but in terms of simply edge v edge, I'm not overly fussed about him. Xavier Coates is an absolute worry, and I think he's got Tito, and Tito, making these tackles on these bigger wingers has been a problem. Munster is the worry for me. I've found that looking at Mitchell Moses on Easter Monday, these halves that tend to drift around, play both sides, play a bit at lib, put a kick in behind, throw a cut out, these sorts of things, double up, double team with their half. We tend to struggle with those, so I think that will be a problem. But those are mainly, those are the main issues for me. It's not like, oh my God, Harry Grant is there through the middle and, oh my, like, touch wood, there's Nas and fuck, we've got to deal with him. And then there's Jack Howarth on an edge. I'm not, it's not the worst Melbourne team to come up against, but again, you have to go with them in that first 20 in both halves, and quite frankly, if we don't, then the game's locked up.
I can't remember. How did Melbourne play last week? Not the Canberra game, the week before. Did they win? Or are they? Are they not coming? They're not coming in off 2 losses, right? Just the one.
They're not coming in off 2 losses. I know that they got trounced by Redcliffe the week previous. They beat Souths in what was a pretty ugly game on Anzac.
Right.
So they lost to They never truly put Souths away.
So they lost to the Dolphins. They had a struggle win against South, and they lost to Canberra. I mean, like, do questions need to be asked about Melbourne? Like, are they as good of a team as people give them credit for this season? Like, that's a pretty bad run of form. Like,
well, or are they going to do the opposite and completely obliterate us?
I mean, that's going to have a lot to do with the. I think it's going to. This game's going to have a lot to do with the Tigers. I think that the Tigers can certainly win this game if they have the belief that they can win this game. And you got to ask yourself, how the Tigers been winning this season? They've been winning with belief. You know what I mean? Like, they're not a team that's beating themselves. Quite the opposite. So, coming in off that run of form, like, I think what I would say, to your point about Munster and the halves that drift around across the ground.
Yep.
That is true. The Tigers are susceptible to, the second phase, in broken field we become susceptible, but we also have worked out how to defend in broken field. We get back a lot more. There's a lot more players that are running back on side. You've got the likes of Luai and Taruva and Galvin, who are, like, if anything, that's the big time secret strengths of those three. Getting back in cover, Buller is another one. Which means that in order to capitalize off of that second phase and that broken field attack that I think is inevitable, you're going to see that in patches in this game. Because worse teams than Melbourne have been able to put themselves in situations like that against us. They have to be clinical to finish, though, because there's always going to be a Tiger in frame. And I look at the Melbourne lineup and I see some clunky players, to be honest. I see some players who, kind of, I've seen in the past, them Butterfingers are fucking line wide open. I know Coates has that sort of in him. Grant Anderson has that kind of quality in him. Falongo has that kind of quality in him. Munster, I've seen do that. Like, when they have to be clinical, I think they're a little bit of a team of front runners, a little bit like Brisbane, to be honest. Like, when they're in the grind and they have to be clinical, they don't actually pull off the plays. But if they start to get on a roll and they, score a couple of tries and they get a couple up and they get, the confidence under them, that's when you start to see them finish off those clinical tries. And it's a subtle difference. Like, you get a team like Parramatta who can score off of those broken field, weird, long-term build-up tries. They're clinical whenever, whether they're under pressure or not, they can finish those sort of tries. But some other teams, and the Tigers are a bit like that too, where the Tigers can score those weird tries at any time. But then there are other teams that are more likely to dominate you in a system, like Penrith, Melbourne, so on and so forth, and they, you know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Yeah. It's like their identity becomes winning games in a clean sort of fashion, and it's a very traditional win curve throughout the game. So I think that the key for this game for the Tigers is going to be the cover defense. It's going to be that desperation defense.
They're going to have to scramble.
if we're strong in scramble, we'll stay in the game. We'll stay in the grind, and I think we can win. But if Melbourne get a couple of tries early off of sort of just routine sort of plays, get a repeat set, get down their end early, easy, strip us for numbers, Coates and over this, and then they follow it up in another try, easy try. The floodgates can maybe open, but they haven't opened on us yet this season, so I wouldn't be betting on that happening.
Let's wait and see. Before you score prediction, just quickly, Scott says you need May to run for 300 metres. No, I want him to run for 120 because I only want him to play 50-odd minutes. Please, rotate your bench, Benji. How have we been winning? By dragging the opposition to our level and beating them with experience? Well said. I would love to see another Sharks-esque dogfight. Bryce says Sam Weller will be ready to rise to the challenge. I hope so, mate. First says that's where the Storm will attack the backline from Galvin and Aiden. Absolutely agree. That's where the points are. Dewey is going to have to be really prepared. They'll run Pappy and Bloor into that space. Tigers to win. No Grant. It's very possible. I hope so, mate. What's the deal with letting the opposition score between 35 and 40? There must be a stat. Don't talk about it. It's ingrained into the culture. Melbourne are more likely to exploit our mistakes more effectively than previous teams we have beaten this year. Absolutely agree, CB, and that's the problem that I have. I really think they're going to have a crack at us. Last few weeks have shown just how much they need Harry. Yes, but again, they might just blow us away in the first 20, mate. You just never know. But look, Melbourne,
I just don't think so. Like, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
I think they'll punish us if we're not careful.
I think that we're still a kind of acclimating to the reality of what the NRL 2025 Premiership season looks like, and that in that reality, there isn't much separating like the team running second from the team running fucking 16th, 17th, really. Like, I mean, Para with Mitch Moses back, the Titans are a side that can win at any given moment, and then Penrith are third last. Like, there's really not much separating every team but the Dogs from the rest of the pack. So I don't think that the Storm are as good as on paper, even as good as as far better than us as people would naturally think that they are. I think we're actually much closer to them. I mean, we have the same amount of wins as them this season.
Yeah, well, who knows? Give me a score prediction.
I don't know. Like, I think that Melbourne will come out of this game with a win and feel very, very lucky for it. I feel like the score is probably going to be like something like 28-26.
Okay, I think it'll be about 42-18 to Melbourne, and the scoreline will flatter them a little bit. I think they'll just score tries in weird patches. But
that's like the Brisbane result, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. I've got to run, but I'll run Cup and Flegg really quickly. It was clear from the outside that neither side was particularly keen on defending in Cup. Just some notes here, mainly on individual players. Sukar was rocks and diamonds. He took some good runs and hit some good gaps, and then there was a miss down the short side for St George's fourth try, and then there was a miss through the middle on Cody Ramsey, and they scored their fifth. The left edge was no good defensively and targeted. It was disrupted through the week, but yeah, it just wasn't up to standard. You've got some guys sticking to the structure, so that John Morris, sort of sliding off a little bit, waiting for the defence to come on the inside and then pushing up. And then you've got other guys just jamming, and guys like, Isaac Tuatupor is one of them, and we got picked off as a result. I'm really jealous of the Dragons. They got some really, really classy players and some experienced guys mixed in with some absolute young guns like Halanahu. Finn Alatu is obviously under to the Dogs next year, but he's still a part of that side. And they're so much better in terms of structure. They were swinging the footy from tap kicks and, turning blokes back inside in the middle, and they just looked like a side that was, a second-grade NRL side as opposed to a park footy team. Heath Mason, I think, got pulled off because he was injured for no other reason, but I did see him give up on the kick for their second try when the ball was sort of just laying about, and I thought he sort of thought his teammate hadn't pulled up, which doesn't really suit this all effort, all the time sort of mantra that Marsh was pushing. Christian Mopapalengi's got some work to do defensively before we start considering it as a prospect. Same with Elsa Cam. Lylesy, or most of our attacking stuff, sort of good attacking plays went through him. I think he's, Cup is his level for now. No communication from the back three, wasn't very good. I thought Noah Johansson was good through the middle and deserves to start this week, so good on him. Charlie Murray was solid. Tristan Hope also deserves to be fed. The rest of the forwards, not so much. Matamil brought some energy and spark, but he needed to be injected earlier. His chip kick at the end was pretty nice, but it was befitting of a team that was down by 60. Archie Duncan got activated as the 18th man, and he played the last 10. Look, very keen, very busy, but I think his development is best served in flag. Anything there?
No. What do you want me to say?
Nothing.
What did I say? What did I say about the Magpies last week?
Whatever it was.
And then they come out and get 60 put on them. Please.
It is terrible at the moment. Flag, they got pumped as well, but it was a really weird one. We were in control at 12-10, and then Will Craig got out-jumped for St George to score 10 out from half-time. That was the turning point. They went the distance on the next set with Reid throwing a short ball, Cabe Reid isolating Tanos with Cyrus Stanley Trail, 22-12, and then Cabe Reid hung it up in the breeze again, and Craig got out-leaked again. Cabe Reid is a great footballer, let it be known. Thought Tom Fisher was really good. Phoenix Godinay, he's playing in the centres at the moment simply due to his size, but he's still hard to put down. He's making his tackles. He's doing good things. For a guy that's year young in ball, for him playing, those 3 years he's senior, he's great. Jared Hayward had some time in the halves. He's a little bit unconventional, but he's a natural footballer. Did really well to set up Mitch Tautua for his try. Solo and Will Craig were pretty disappointing for mine, especially defensively. You heard what I said about Will with his aerial efforts. Max Tautua, big fan. Logan Brooks made his debut. Wasn't super involved, but nice to see him get a try assist for one of Solos. I like the look of Leonard Plutty, who was the number 18, I think. He was good. And Byron Laupepper had plenty of energy when he came on the field as well. That's my pathways wrap. Anything else?
I'm pretty happy that they're funneling through the SG Ball players into the flag. I hope that we see the young Magpies fullback get a run. What's his name again? Oitman. Yeah, I think. I'd like to see him. I'd like to see the other. What's his name? The other Benson, the other Balmain half.
Yeah. I think he's a bit of a way down, but
I think Benson's playing style is the sort of playing style that means that he won't struggle with the leap up so much. He's got a very simple running based playing style, so I think he might surprise. I feel like he has a good developmental curve to him. Like the amount of improvement from last year to this year that I saw in him, I would actually expect him to actually be one of those sort of players that plays to the grade a bit.
maybe.
Tafaingen didn't play.
No, he didn't. But he didn't have a great game the week previous. So
Okay.
But hopefully the boys improve.
Yeah, it's weird. I hope that the problem with the pathways is that we have a lot of young players, and I know we did in the Magpie side, and the Balmain side overperformed early in the season. Wasn't a great roster anyway, and I think that. But I don't know. There's certainly a lot of players that I would have expected to be further along than they are. The likes of Kit, Tony Sukar. These are the players that were earmarked early on for development, Felity, and so on and so forth. And I think questions need to start being asked about what we're actually doing to develop these young players, especially when you also have somebody like Lachlan Galvin choosing to leave. So I know that we're the podcast of positivity, but when you see New South Wales Cup and flag sides getting pumped, neither SG Ball side making the finals, the only saving grace is that our first grade side are performing really, really well, which is obviously what everything's all about, right? But when we need to bring those new guys through, like there's not much coming through. So it's a big problem. And if I was Richo, I'd be asking a lot of questions about the football operation. And as a fan, I'm asking a lot of questions about the broader football operation right now.
Don't blame him. One for us to talk about in the bio. I think a big wrap will be bound then. That said, West Tigers episode 31. Thank you all for your time. Subscribe, like, etc. Follow us in all the relevant places. Mac, anything else?
Nah, let's keep it short this week. Ciao, everybody.
See you guys.
We're only strangers until we realize this life is temporary.